So what we're looking at today is we're looking at 4E, which is application questions of some of the graphs that you guys have been working on over the last few classes. So the first thing we want to do is we want to look at question 1, a rectangular hyperbola y equals a over x plus 3 passes through the point 1, 8. Find me the value of a. Alright, so the first things first, how do we do that? So first things first, we're going to have to lay out our equation here. We know it is y equals a over x plus 3. We know that it goes through 1, 8. That's our x value, that's our y value. Substitute it in. 8 equals a over 1 plus 3. What does that mean a is? Why don't we solve it? It equals 5. Alright, so a is going to be equal to 5. Nice and easy question there. Alright, simply substitute it in and we're done. Now, where it gets trickier is question 2, where we have different things like a rectangular hyperbola. So again, still same thing, but this time it has been shifted. There are 3 things that we need to know. So, y equals a over x minus h plus k. We are told it has a vertical asymptote at x equals 3. The vertical asymptote is at 3. The HA is at 4. And it also passes through the point of 0, 6. So that's all the information we know. So what is x? What is h? What is k? Using the information that I have there, what is h and what is k? Alright. The vertical asymptote is at h or k. Alright, the vertical asymptote is that number there. It is h. There's nothing sneaky about this one. H is just straight up 3. Remember, x minus h moves the graph to the right. Alright. So our equation is now going to look like y equals a over x minus 3 plus 4. We have the value 0, 6. So x is 0, y is 6. 6 equals a over 0 minus 3 plus 4. Minus 2 from both sides, and I get 2 equals a over minus 3. And then what happens next? What is a equal to? Thank you, Jaden. Thank you, Hawa. Thank you, Sada. A equals to minus 6. Alright, so the full equation would be y equals minus 6 over x minus 3 plus 4. And then everything should nice and neatly cancel down. Alright. Now, where it gets tricky though, is you have, so we're on question 3, A rectangular hyperbola passes through 1, 8 and minus 1, 7. Find A and K. So generally speaking, if I have two unknowns, what am I going to need to do? What type of equation am I going to need to solve? Thank you, Bol. So, y equals a over x plus k. I have minus 1, 8 and minus 1, 7. So I'm going to need to substitute both of these values into my equation here. And I'm going to get 8 equals a over 1 plus k. And I'm also going to have 7 equals a over minus 1 plus k. Simplify all that down. And what am I going to get? I'm going to have two equations. And I'm simply just going to have 8 equals a plus k, because that divided by 1 doesn't matter. And 7 is going to be equal to k minus a, because of how it's all sorted out. Now, what I could do is there are two ways I can do it. Obviously, I can go elimination or I can go substitution. The easiest way for me is to probably simply go, all right, if I take this bottom one here and I reorganize it, what can I reorganize it to so everything's positive? Open the video to full screen. Can you see that now? Give it a sec to update. Again, remember, you cannot watch these small screen, you've got to go full screen. The YouTube video, you'll be able to see everything in a small window, but for now, watch it full screen. Alright, so what we're going to do is we are going to reorganize this bottom one. We're going to take the minus a and put it over there. So I end up with k equals 7 plus a. Alright? So both statements are still true. I've just reorganized it. So I now have equation 1 and I have equation 2. I'm going to substitute equation 2 into equation 1. Alright, substitute equation 2 into equation 1 and I get 8 equals a plus 7 plus a. Which means that I have this here, which means I have 8 equals 2a plus 7 minus 7 per sides 1 equals 2a. That means a is equal to 1/2. Now that I have that, I can use the information that I got previously. I know that k is equal to 7 plus a. That means that k is equal to 7 plus 1 over 2. So that means k is equal to 7.5. Going back to our original equation, the rectangular hyperbola y equals a over x plus k passes through 1, 8 and minus 1, 7. Substituting in our values, we now know that a is equal to a half and that k is 7.5. So the full equation will be y equals 1 over 2x plus 7.5. Because now the reason why this works the way it does is what you need to do is you need to think about it in terms of a multiplied by 1 on x. A is equal to 1/2, so it's 1/2 times 1 over x. That's why I have it the way I do. All right, that should be there. Should be your final answer. All right. And we'll leave question 4 there because that is one that is very similar to question 2, but has a slightly different thing that you're going to need to do. H is going to be a negative number. K is also going to be a negative number. All right, so moving on to the next part of the textbook. All right, so next lot of questions. We have got some square root questions and some circle questions. So, the graph has the rule y equals a root x, passing through the point of 2, 8. Find the value of a. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to set up our basic equation, y equals a root x, passing through the point 2, 8. Again, that is x, that is y, so it's going to be 8 equals a times root 2. That means that a is going to be equal to 8 divided by root 2, which I'm sure you guys can very quickly work out. A is equal to 4 root 2. Because I multiplied both of these by root 2 on 2, these cancel down to just 2. 8 divided by 2 is just 4. All right, so the final equation would be y equals 4 times root 2 times x, which you can then simplify down to y equals 4 2x. Next, we have a square root graph, a square root equation that has been translated. Y equals a x minus h. Oh, I say minus, I mean times by the square root of. And it passes through 1, 2. and 10, 4. 10, 4, good buddy. So I'm going to need to again do this simultaneously. So y equals 2 equals a square root of 1 minus h. And so that's equation 1. And equation 2 is going to be 4 equals a 10 minus h. Alright, so this is where it's going to get a little bit complicated, because what we're going to need to do is we are probably going to need to figure out a way of doing this without involving the square roots. Alright. So because they both use h and they both are using a, we can solve this. Probably the best way of doing so is with probably going to have to put them back to back, I think. And the easiest way to do that is to square I think we're just going to have to square everything. All right. So you have to square everything. So if I square everything, then I'm going to have I need to square both. So question 1 is going to be equal to 4 equals a squared 1 minus h. Because again, if I've squared everything, then that gets squared, everything's nice and happy. And then equation 2 is going to be 16 equals a squared 10 minus h. And then from there, I can expand that. Because remember, I cannot subtract these to get rid of these a squareds. It doesn't work that way. So what I will do is I will then expand both of these. So I'll have 1 dash, 2 dash, because they've been expanded. 4 equals a squared minus ha squared. 16 equals 10a squared minus ha squared. Now, if I were to subtract these from each other, what happens to the minus ha squareds? If I were to subtract these from each other, what happens? All right, I would eliminate the ha squareds. All right, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to subtract these from each other. So I'm going to now have 4 minus 16, which is minus 12. I'm going to have a squared minus 10a squared. What's a squared minus 10a squared? A squared minus 10a squared. Minus 9a squared. And minus ha squared minus ha squared cancels out. And I'm left with just this here. Which means I can divide both sides by minus 9. and I get the answer of a squared equals positive 4 over 3. Alright, because remember, minus 12 divided by minus 9, the negatives cancel out. 12 over 9 is equal to 4 over 3. And then that means I can just take the square root of both, take the square root. So I get the square root of 4 divided by the square root of 3, which is 2 on root 3, which is 2 root 3 on 3. So now that I have that though, I'm in a bit of a dilemma here because what's happened is that I've now solved for A. All right, when you are rationalizing it, because you have a surd on the bottom of a fraction, you multiply the top and bottom by that surd. Surd times a surd, they get rid of each other and you get yourself with 3. So root 3 times root 3 is just 3, just like root 4 times root 4 is just 4. All right, so we do that to clean it up a little bit. Now, the problem is that I now need to solve for h. So I found A is this, but I need to solve for h as well. But luckily, I have this equation right here. How can I use that equation to solve for h? Do I know what A is? Do I know what A squared is? Yes. All right. I actually already have an answer for what is A squared. So if I can sub A squared straight into here, I don't need to do any re-squaring of this nonsense. So what I can now do is I'm going to move down, do it in blue. 4 equals 4 over 3 minus h times 4 over 3. I'm now going to multiply everything. I'm now going to multiply everything by 3. If I multiply everything by 3, I can get rid of these 2 3's down the bottom here. And I now have 12 equals 4 minus 4h. Subtract 4 from both sides, and I get 8 equals minus 4h. That means that h is equal to minus 2. So going back to my original equation, y is going to be equal to 2 root 3 on 3 times by x plus 2. All right. I wouldn't expect you guys to have to put this together. However, what we can do is we can also use our CAS calculators to help us do this. So can everybody see my CAS in the bottom left corner? Yep. All right, so what I might do is I might move this over here and move this to the top. All right, because what I really need is I need the two equations that we had here. 4 equals a squared minus ha squared, and that will help us figure out our value. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do this simultaneously. So again, keyboard, you need to use this little doohickey here. So we're going to go 4 equals a squared HA squared, and 16 equals 10a squared minus HA squared. And I'm looking to solve for a comma h. That's clearly wrong because I worked it out. There we go. Make sure everything's nice and fixed. A is equal to negative 2 root 3. Oh yes, plus minuses. Isn't that lovely? All right, so this is the one we want. Because one of these answers is impossible because the graph doesn't exist. That graph probably doesn't pass through those points. So if we go back to our original equation, we can probably use our CAS to give us the exact answer without needing to go through any of this other stuff here. So we can go CAS, we can substitute in our x and y values automatically. So for example, 2 equals a square root x minus, 1 minus h. And then we can put in 10. Sorry. 4 equals a square root 10 minus h. And then again, we want to solve for a comma h. And it gives us one answer, which is the answer that we want, which is the answer I got. Alright, so we can use our CAS to do a lot of these for us. But it's still helpful to know how to do these things by hand, because then you at least understand how the CAS got its answer. Alright, so I'm going to go over question 7, and then we're going to wrap it up for the video recording because I've gone a little bit longer than I thought I would. Alright. So I will move the calculator back to where it belongs, and I'll move my whiteboard back to where it belongs. And we need a new whiteboard, I think. All right, and the last question that we're going to do together is find the equation of the circle whose center is at point 2, 1 and passes through the point 4, 3. All right, so we have a circle of center at point 2, 1. And it passes through the point 4, 3. So what we need to find out here is what's the radius going to be? All right, so remember we can go, it's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. All right, it's pretty easy to figure out what r squared is if I can substitute in all this information that I have here. So if the circle is at 2, 1, what is my h value and what is my k value? Let's go back to our conics section here. We will fiddle with our graph a little bit. We want the center to be at 2, 1. All right, so what do we need to do to make, so the center to be at 2, so A is going to need to be, or H, it's going to need to be x minus 2. And y minus 1. So it's going to be x minus 2, y minus 1. All right. Now, because the minuses are already in the template of the equation, h is just going to be 2 and k is going to be 1. All right. There's nothing else that needs to happen, take place there. So the center of my graph is going to be at, it's going to be x minus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals r squared. Now, where does it say the equation of the graph goes? Where does it say it passes through? It passes through 4 minus 3. So we're going to get 4 minus 2 squared plus minus 3 minus 1 squared equals r squared. 4 minus 2 is just 2, so 2 squared is 4. Minus 3 minus 1 is minus 4. Minus 4 squared is 16. 4 plus 16 equals r squared. That means that r is going to be root 20. R is going to be equal to the square root of 20, which is equal to root 4 times root 5, which means that r is going to be equal to 2. R is going to be equal to 2 root 5. All right, so it is a weird radius value, but it is still applicable. So what you might write, yes, please use surds to represent the answer. So r squared would just be 20. So if I were to write this full equation out, the full equation would look like, it would be x minus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 20. And that would be it. Nothing else that would need to be done there. All right, because there's no point in doing 2 root 5 all squared, because 2 root 5 all squared is still 20. All right, so if you've got any particular questions, please email them to me, and I will record a video to answer them as quickly as possible. I know a lot of people have some questions about 4A through 4D. I will get to those. I just need a little bit of time to record them. So until now, you should be able to go off and have a go at some of the 4E questions, but email me your questions for 4A through 4D. All right, and I will try and record a video as soon as I can. All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.